Forest City police say they're continuing to search for a suspect involved in a homicide. They say 25-year-old Tyler Weaver was found dead at his home this morning on Harris Lee Drive. We did get our camera crew at least near the scene, although investigators had a lot of that site closed off. They believe the suspect took off into the woods nearby, so they say they are following up on several leads.
At this point, we have about 3 or 4 different leads, all kinds of in different directions. So we're working to kind of filter out what the validity of any of those leads are, and before we kind of try to make some appeals to the public for any public assistance.
A 25-year-old national kart racing champion was shot multiple times and killed in his own home while his pregnant fiancée watched helplessly, barely escaping with her life as 2 armed intruders burst through the door in what police would later describe as a targeted attack. The young man, who had built his legacy on speed and precision on a racetrack, never had a chance to defend himself against the violence that shattered a quiet Thursday morning in rural North Carolina. Welcome to True Crime Lures, where we delve into the most compelling and heartbreaking cases that shake communities to their core. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Your support helps us continue telling these important stories with the respect and thoroughness they deserve. Today's case is particularly devastating because it involves not just the loss of a promising young life, but the destruction of a family's dreams and a community's sense of safety. This is the story of Tyler Weaver. Forest City, North Carolina, is the kind of place where people know their neighbors, where violent crime feels like something that happens elsewhere. Nestled in Rutherford County in the western part of the state, this town of roughly 7,400 residents had long been a quiet, working-class community where families built lives and raised children away from the chaos of larger cities. The tree-lined streets and modest homes created an atmosphere of security, the kind of place where people didn't typically lock their doors during the day or worry about home invasions. Harris Lee Drive, a residential street surrounded by wooded areas, embodied this sense of rural peace. It was the last place anyone would expect to become the scene of a brutal murder. Tyler David Weaver had speed in his blood from an early age. Born in 2000, Tyler grew up with a passion for kart racing that defined much of his childhood and young adulthood. But this wasn't a solitary pursuit. It was a family legacy, one he shared most intimately with his father, Danny Weaver. The bond between father and son was forged on racetracks across the country, where the roar of engines and the smell of burning rubber became the soundtrack of their relationship. Together, they formed an inseparable racing team, traveling to competitions, fine-tuning equipment in their garage, and celebrating victories that came from countless hours of dedication. In 2018, when Tyler was just 18 years old, all that hard work culminated in an extraordinary achievement. He won the Maxxis Kart Racing National Championship not once, but twice that year, cementing his status as one of the sport's most promising young talents. The victory meant everything to Tyler and his father. It was validation of their shared dream, proof that the sacrifices had been worth it. Maxxis Kart Racing North America would later describe Tyler and Danny as an inseparable team, knowing that their love for racing and the pride they carried in their championship defined what the sport was all about. For Tyler, those championships represented not just personal glory, but tribute to the father who had believed in him every step of the way. But life had more heartbreak in store for the Weaver family. In September 2021, Danny Weaver passed away, leaving Tyler to navigate the world without his best friend, his mentor, and his racing partner. The loss devastated Tyler, but also seemed to strengthen his resolve. He continued working as an electrical tradesman in construction, a demanding job that showcased his practical skills and work ethic. Those who knew Tyler describe him as someone with a heart of gold, always willing to lend a helping hand regardless of someone's background. His kindness knew no bounds, and he had a way of lighting up a room with his presence and warm spirit. By 2025, Tyler had found new reasons to look forward to the future. He was engaged to Nevaeh Quintero, a young woman who shared his life and his dreams. Their relationship was filled with hope and anticipation. They weren't just planning a wedding. They were preparing to become parents. Nevaeh was pregnant, and they were expecting their first son in April 2026. For Tyler, this represented a new chapter, a chance to build the kind of family legacy his father had given him. They had settled into a home at 114 Harris Lee Drive in Forest City, a modest residence where they were building their life together. Everything seemed to be falling into place for the young couple. the future bright with promise. Thursday, October 24th, 2025, began like any other day for Tyler and Nevaeh. The morning was quiet, the kind of peaceful start to a day that young couples treasure as they go about their routines. Tyler, at 25, was in the prime of his life, a working man, a champion, a soon-to-be father. There was no reason to suspect that this Thursday would be any different from the hundreds that had come before it. But at approximately 9:50 a.m., that ordinary morning became a nightmare. Two men approached the home on Harris Lee Drive with violent intent. This was no random burglary, no crime of opportunity committed by desperate addicts looking for quick cash. Police would later describe what happened as a target attack, suggesting that Tyler Weaver's home had been deliberately selected, that someone had identified him as a mark for reasons that will remain unclear even after arrests were made. The intruders didn't knock or attempt to deceive their way inside. They broke in with force, bringing with them firearms and an apparent willingness to use them. Inside the house, Tyler and Nevaeh found themselves suddenly confronted by armed men. Court documents would later reveal that Nevaeh was held at gunpoint, a terrifying experience for any person, but especially for a pregnant woman whose primary concern in those moments must have been not just for her own life, but for her unborn child. What happened next unfolded with horrifying speed. The intruders opened fire, and Tyler Weaver was shot multiple times. The young man who had spent his life mastering speed and split-second decisions on a racetrack had no time to react, no chance to protect himself or his fiancée. In those chaotic moments, as gunshots echoed to the home and Tyler fell, Nevaeh made a desperate decision that would save her life. Despite the armed men in her home, despite the terror of watching the man she loved being shot before her eyes, she managed to break free. She ran from the house, escaping the violence and making it to safety where she could call for help. Her 911 call brought law enforcement racing to Harris Lee Drive, but by the time they arrived, the damage had been done. Officers from the Forest City Police Department, along with deputies from the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office, responded to home invasion call at approximately 9:50 a.m. When they entered the residence at 114 Harris Lee Drive, they found Tyler David Weaver lying on the floor. Rutherford County Emergency Medical Services personnel quickly assessed the situation and made the grim determination that Tyler had already succumbed to his injuries. The young champion was dead at 25, killed in his own home in an act of senseless violence. An autopsy would later confirm what was already apparent at the scene. Tyler had died from multiple gunshot wounds. The suspects, meanwhile, had fled. As officers secured the crime scene inside the home, other law enforcement personnel fanned out into the surrounding area. They conducted an extensive search of the wooded areas around Harris Lee Drive, combing through the trees and undergrowth looking for any sign of the perpetrators. They canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors and questioning residents who might have seen or heard something suspicious. Despite these efforts, it became clear that whoever was responsible for Tyler's murder had escaped before police arrived. Forest City Police Chief Chris Leroy addressed the media in the aftermath of the killing, trying to balance transparency with the need to protect the integrity of an ongoing investigation. He confirmed that Tyler's girlfriend, Nevaeh, had been present during the home invasion but had managed to escape and call 911. Leroy characterized the incident as targeted, not a random act of violence, and described it as a robbery gone bad. The implication was clear. Someone had chosen Tyler Weaver's home for a specific reason, planning to rob him, but the situation had escalated into murder. Leroy also sought to reassure the community, stating that there was no indication of an ongoing danger to the public. The suspect had fled the area, and investigators believe this was an isolated incident, not the beginning of a crime spree. For the Weaver family, these official statements offered little comfort. Tyler's mother, Amanda Rogers, was devastated by the loss of her son. In the days following his death, she spoke about the impossibility of forgiveness, referencing a recent high-profile case where a widow had publicly forgiven her husband's assassin. Rogers admitted she didn't know how such forgiveness was possible. Her child didn't deserve what happened to him. Tyler had been kind, generous, always willing to help others. The senselessness of his death made the grief even more unbearable. Tyler's sister, Taylor Weaver, also expressed her anguish on social media, describing her brother as a kind and beautiful soul with the biggest heart, taken from them far too soon. The racing community that had celebrated Tyler's championships in 2018 now mourned his death. Maxxis Kart Racing North America released a heartfelt statement expressing their heartbreak at losing Tyler at just 25 years old. They emphasized a special bond between Tyler and his late father, Danny, calling them an inseparable team whose love for racing and pride in their championship defined what the sport was all about. The organization declared that Tyler had been one of the most proud champions they'd ever had, and his legacy would always be part of the Maxxis family. The statement ended with a simple but poignant sentiment: once a champion, always a champion. In the immediate aftermath of the murder, as investigators processed the crime scene and followed up on leads, another small tragedy unfolded. During the chaos of the home invasion, Tyler's dog Supreme had run away, terrified by the gunfire and violence. Friends and family pleaded on social media for help locating the missing pet, a request that carried extra emotional weight given the circumstances. Eventually, Supreme was found safe, bringing a small measure of relief to loved ones who were otherwise consumed by grief and shock. Behind the scenes, detectives from the Forest City Police Department were working with assistance from the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation to process forensic evidence from the crime scene. They were building a case, following investigative leads as they developed, trying to identify who had killed Tyler Weaver and why. On October 29th, just 5 days after the murder, investigators executed search warrants, including one at Tyler's residence on Harris Lee Drive. The warrants were part of the effort to collect evidence and piece together what had happened that morning. Law enforcement sources later indicated that a crucial piece of evidence had been recovered from the scene: fingerprints. These prints would prove instrumental in identifying one of the suspects. The investigation was moving forward, but it required patience and methodical police work. Detectives had to build a case solid enough to secure arrests and eventual convictions. 3 days after the murder, on October 27th, investigators developed sufficient probable cause to seek arrest warrants. After consulting with the district attorney's office, warrants were issued charging 2 men with first-degree murder in Tyler Weaver's death. The suspects were identified as Jaquavious Antoine Craig, 26, of Grover, North Carolina, and Quitez Watkins, 35, of Lawndale, North Carolina. Both men had extensive criminal histories, and both had fled the area after the murder. Jaquavious Antoine Craig was no stranger to law enforcement. Court documents revealed that he had a prior conviction from 2020 for conspiracy to commit robbery with a dangerous weapon, a charge that bore an unsettling similarity to the crime he now stood accused of committing. His criminal history also included assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, robbery with a dangerous weapon, felony breaking and entering, and assault on a female. Some of his cases in Cleveland County had been dismissed due to insufficient evidence, but the pattern of violent and property crimes was clear. Authorities would later describe Craig as the alleged mastermind of the plot to rob Tyler Weaver. At the time of the murder, Craig was on probation for being a felon in possession of a firearm, meaning he was already under correctional supervision when he allegedly participated in killing Tyler. Quitez Watkins, who went by several aliases including Brandon Lamar Roseboro and had earned the prison nickname Bando Red, had an even more extensive and violent criminal history. Court records showed previous arrests for assault with a deadly weapon with intent to cause serious injury, possession of a firearm by a felon, methamphetamine trafficking, possession of cocaine, heroin and opium, and habitual assault. Most troubling, Watkins had been convicted in federal court of an assault that led to someone's death. Despite this violent criminal history, Watkins was out on bond at the time of Tyler's murder, facing a slew of pending charges in Rutherford, Cleveland, and Polk counties. The fact that a man with such a dangerous record was free to commit another violent crime raised serious questions about the bail system and the supervision of repeat offenders. With arrest warrants in hand, investigators faced the challenge of actually locating and apprehending Craig and Watkins, who had gone into hiding. The Forest City Police Department requested assistance from the U.S. Marshal Service, specifically the Carolinas Regional Fugitive Task Force, an elite unit specializing in tracking down dangerous fugitives. For 10 days, the 2 suspects remained at large while law enforcement worked to track them down. The investigation involved multiple jurisdictions and agencies, with information being gathered and analyzed to determine where Craig and Watkins might be hiding. On November 3rd, 2025, 10 days after Tyler Weaver's murder, the manhunt came to an end. Members of the Carolinas Regional Fugitive Task Force, led by the U.S. Marshal's Office, located Quitez Watkins and arrested him without incident. The apprehension was a result of coordinated law enforcement work and the kind of investigative persistence that ensures dangerous criminals can't simply disappear after committing violent crimes. Watkins was transported to the Rutherford County Detention Center, where he was held without bond pending his first court appearance. That same day, Jaquavious Craig made a different choice. Rather than waiting to be tracked down by law enforcement, Craig turned himself in at the Rutherford County Detention Center. It's unclear what motivated his decision to surrender, whether he believed the evidence against him was overwhelming, whether he hoped cooperation might benefit him in court, or whether the stress of being a fugitive had simply become too much. Regardless of his reasons, Craig was taken into custody and, like Watkins, held without bond. Both men were formally charged with first-degree murder, the most serious homicide charge under North Carolina law. First-degree murder requires proof of premeditation and deliberation, suggesting that prosecutors believe Craig and Watkins had planned the robbery that led to Tyler's death, and that the killing was not merely accidental or the result of panic in the moment. The charge carries the possibility of life in prison without parole or, in some circumstances, the death penalty. Both suspects were ordered held without bail, deemed too dangerous and too much a flight risk to be released pending trial. The arrests brought some measure of relief to Tyler's family and the Forest City community, but they couldn't restore what had been lost. Tyler Weaver was still gone, his life cut short just as he was building something beautiful with Nevaeh. Their son would now grow up without a father, knowing his dad only through stories and photographs. Amanda Rogers would never again see her son smile or hear his voice. The racing community had lost not just a champion, but a passionate competitor who had embodied the spirit of the sport. As of early November 2025, the case against Jaquavious Craig and Quitez Watkins was proceeding through the criminal justice system. Both men had made their initial court appearances and remained in custody at the Rutherford County Detention Center. The investigation, while having led to arrests, remained active as prosecutors built their case for trial. Authorities continued gathering evidence and following up on details that might strengthen their prosecution. Several critical questions remained unanswered. Perhaps most pressing, why was Tyler Weaver targeted? Police Chief Leroy had described the incident as a targeted robbery, but what made Tyler a target? Was it something he possessed? Did the suspects believe there was money or valuables in the home? Did they know him personally, or had they observed him from a distance? The authorities had not publicly revealed any connection between the suspects and the victim, leaving the motive shrouded in mystery. The community of Forest City grappled with the aftermath of the killing. The sense of security that had long defined life on quiet streets like Harris Lee Drive had been shattered. Neighbors who had never worried about home invasions now found themselves reconsidering their safety measures. The case also reignited debates about bail reform and the monitoring of repeat offenders. Quitez Watkins, with his history of violent felonies, had been out on bond when he allegedly participated in murdering Tyler. How many other dangerous individuals were walking the streets despite criminal histories that suggested they pose a clear threat to public safety? Tyler's obituary painted a picture of a life full of promise cut tragically short. He was remembered not just for his racing achievements, but for his character. He had worked hard as an electrical tradesman, contributing to his community through honest labor. He had been a devoted son, brother, and fiancé. He was preparing to become a father, eager to pass on the values his own father had instilled in him. Those who knew Tyler emphasized his generosity, his willingness to help anyone in need, and his kind heart. These were the qualities that made his death feel even more senseless. Tyler had been the kind of person who made the world better, and now he was gone because two men had decided to commit a violent robbery. The case served as a grim reminder of how quickly life can change, how violence can intrude into even the safest seeming spaces. Tyler Weaver woke up on October 24th, 2025, probably thinking about ordinary things, work, his upcoming child, plans for the future. He had no way of knowing that two career criminals had marked him as a target, that within hours he would be fighting for his life in his own home. Nevaeh Quintero, 2, would carry the trauma that morning for the rest of her life, having witnessed the murder of the man she loved while pregnant with his child. As the legal process moved forward, Tyler's family and friends could only hope for justice, though they understood that no verdict, no sentence could truly compensate for their loss. The two men accused of killing Tyler would have their day in court, where evidence would be presented and a jury would decide their fate. But regardless of the outcome, Tyler Weaver, the two-time national kart racing champion, the electrical tradesman, the devoted son and fiancé, the expectant father, would remain gone if potential unfulfilled, his son left to grow up without him. The investigation into why Tyler was targeted continues, with authorities still piecing together the full picture of what happened that October morning. The Forest City Police Department has asked anyone with information about the case to come forward, hoping that additional details might emerge to help prosecute Craig and Watkins and provide Tyler's family with answers. Tyler's legacy lives on in the memories of those who loved him, in the racing championships that will forever bear his name, and in the son he never got to meet. The karting community has vowed to remember him as one of their own, a champion who brought pride to the sport. His family continues to grieve, seeking strength and faith in the support of their community. And in Forest City, a town forever changed by the violence that claimed Tyler's life, residents have been reminded of both the fragility of safety and the importance of coming together in the face of tragedy. The case of Tyler Weaver is a stark illustration of how crime doesn't just take lives. It destroys futures, devastates families, and leaves communities wrestling with fear and loss. As Jaquavious Craig and Quitez Watkins await trial, the question remains, will justice for Tyler provide any real solace to those left behind, or will it simply be one more chapter in a story that should never have been written? For now, Tyler Weaver's family, friends, and a racing community that celebrated his triumphs can only remember the young man who brought so much joy to those around him, whose kindness knew no bounds, and whose life was stolen far too soon. Once a champion, always a champion, but now also forever gone. If this case has affected you, or if you have any information that might help investigators, please contact the Forest City Police Department at 828-245-5555. And if you found this coverage meaningful, please subscribe to True Crime Lures and share this video to help us continue telling these important stories. Thank you for watching, and please keep Tyler's family in your thoughts.